Hello and welcome back to the Voice It podcast. Great stories about great people who've started a business and have turned it into a success. This is season 2. So glad you're still listening. I'm your host, Annabelle Homer. And today you'll meet a very quick-witted, heavily tattooed Kiwi who dabbles in wine. Colin McBryde. He and his wife Jen Gardner run a small wine company called Adelina Wines, located in close proximity to the very well-known Wendouree Wines in the beautiful Clare Valley. Now, that gives you an idea where they are. But Colin has a story of his very own. I wanted to meet him because I haven't heard much about Adelina, and I also loved the sound of his other label, Some Young Punks. Are you intrigued? Well, I sure was. I sat down with him in his winery one chilly Monday morning. To be honest, I caught him on the back foot because he forgot I was coming, but I was determined to stay and get his story. He's an entertaining bloke, very humble, as you'll hear, and obviously very good at what he does. This is Colin's story.
I'm a Kiwi. I was born in Auckland. I grew up in New Zealand and a bit in the UK, and I moved to Australia in 1998. I came to study, and I ended up meeting my now wife, and I'm still here.
So tell me about life in New Zealand. I mean, what was your family life like?
Oh, just fairly normal, beaten with a whip occasionally, locked in a cupboard, Hessian bags underwater, that kind of thing. It's fairly simple, mundane stuff, really. Fairly classic Antipodean upbringing, really.
And siblings?
I have one sister, yeah.
And did you grow up near vineyards? Not
until later, like when I was near the end of high school. We moved to Waimalku, which is just north of Auckland, and there's vineyards around there. So, I guess luminaries like Kiwi River. So I knew of the industry, and when I needed a job, I decided to apply to wineries. So
tell me about what you were like as a kid.
A recalcitrant.
Well, tell me more.
I was just like any teenage boy, a bit bullish and know-it-all and egotistical, and probably just needed to pull my head in a bit. So drinking excessively and doing dumb stuff, that was basically it. I guess the norms of what rebellion is, and nothing really out of the box or out of the ordinary. Was just.
What did your parents do?
My mum she worked at numerous different jobs, and my father was an industrial chemist.
Industrial chemist. So do you think genetically that's why you were so into science down the track, or it's got nothing to do with that?
No. Genetically you can look at it like that. The norms of either left or right hemispherical thinking. But I guess that I favoured scientific thinking over and above arts. So,
are they all still over in New Zealand?
Yes, they're both alive still, and they're both in New Zealand still. Yeah,
they're both alive. That's good. What about your sister?
Yeah, she moved to the UK, to the big OE when I moved to Australia, and she's back in New Zealand now.
You wouldn't have seen them for a while, I can imagine, with all this COVID business.
No, I haven't been home for a number of years. In fact, I don't get home very often at all. So I think I've been home 3 times since 98.
Is it just because you've been busy?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. A few things on. But everyone's busy. I just like to complain about it more.
I read somewhere that at 17 you got a tattoo, got kicked out of home and started working at a winery. Is that true?
Yep.
So why did you get kicked out of home?
Because I got a tattoo. So I have a staunch Irish Catholic mother. So she wasn't favoured by the idea of tattoos, and the culture around tattoos have changed quite considerably, I guess, over the past 25 years.
Would you like to reveal to me, what that tattoo was?
Oh, yeah, it was a fighting Irish leprechaun.
I'm trying to imagine what that looks like. Okay, what's the story behind that then?
Well, I'm just being Irish, that's all, with an Irish mother. But it's the emblem of Notre Dame University in the US as well, like if that harks back any memory. It was a rad tattoo. It was done by one of the kind of old guard tattooers from Australia and New Zealand called Merv O'Connor on Karango Abbey Road. It was cool. So.
And you've probably got more than one now.
Yes. I've nearly a full suit.
No, you started working at this winery at 17, thought it was better money than working at KFC. So
Yep.
tell me about your first stint at a winery. What did you think?
I hated it. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it was Sealacs in Auckland, and Ivan Sealac gave me a job. Not quite sure why, but he did, and it was vintage, so I got all the jobs that need to get done, like cleaning mould off cooling pipes and that kind of thing. Like it was, that's what I did. I pulled out a vineyard by myself with a train and a tractor. It was, I was not I didn't have a great work ethic. I wasn't a diligent worker. I would have been a horrible employee. But I kind of persevered and thought that would be, this may be a path that I'd like to go down in terms of, studying. So.
Did you go well at school?
Not at high school, no. I wasn't. I'm not particularly smart by any stretch of the imagination. And my what they call TER. What's entrance days these days?
Oh God, TER.
Is it TER? Yeah, that was terrible. But I was never classically gifted at school.
Maybe, do you think you just didn't apply yourself? Because you obviously are intelligent down the track.
Possibly, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't gear myself to think in a way that I could, I didn't look at other options of learning, I think, which is a polite way of saying I was slow.
Your employer persevered with you. If you hated it so much and you didn't think much of it, you stuck in there because you wanted to, I guess, see where it took you. But why do you think your employer...
Well, I left that job in, I reckon, December, so I decided to study and I moved to Napier, which is down the coast in New Zealand. They were offering a course for the first time, correspondence. So they were doing, it's essentially a TAFE, but they were doing a co-joined correspondence course with Charles Sturt Wagga. So I enrolled for the first year of wine science there, and I sucked at that as well.
But why did you want to do that?
Well, look, I don't know. It was one of those things. It was the era where tertiary education was being pushed, and I think my parents had always thought that I should go to university. So I was looking for something to do at university, and this seemed like a fairly logical option, I guess.
So you did that, you sucked at it. So what happened after that?
I dropped out of after first year, and I took another job at CJ Pask in Hawke's Bay. And Kate Radburn, the winemaker there, again, they gave me a job. I'm not quite sure why they gave me the job, but they did. And I worked vintage there and had a great experience. It was, Kate was and still is a great mentor and a wonderful human. And, I guess that's where things prospered really for me.
So what side of it really prospered for you? What clicked for you there that you thought, yeah, I like this?
I'm not sure what it was specifically. I just enjoyed myself, I think. I was given a bit more opportunity or a bit more responsibility, or maybe one day I'd turn up to work on time. Exciting.
So how long did you stay with that winery?
I just did vintage there, and then I went to the US and worked vintage there.
That's pretty exciting. Just, hop on a plane, go to the US. So you saved enough money to go to the US.
Yeah.
How did you know where to go over there?
Bruce, who was the cellar master at Pask's, set me up with a winery in Oregon called Rex Hill. Lynn Penerash was the winemaker then, and again I had a great time there, and probably just a bit, again, young and bullish, maybe could have learned a bit more whilst I was there, but I had a really good time, met some wonderful people, went back to New Zealand.
And the work that you did over in Oregon, was that mainly the dog's body type stuff, or were you given a lot more opportunity?
The mainstay of what I've always done has been dog's body stuff, like it's cleaning, that kind of thing. That's
where you have to start.
Well, I think that's where it all is, though, as well. Ultimately, even now, that's my role.
Nothing's changed.
No.
It's all about winemaking. It's all about cleaning, making sure it's a sterile environment.
So I recently wrote it's 7% cleaning, 103% telling people you're a winemaker. But that's a nice experience too. So
you remind me a lot of Marnie Roberts, to the point where when I interviewed her, she was very much, I wasn't sure. This wasn't what I was going to do. I wasn't particularly good at it. Wasn't ambitious. I just fell into it. I'm kind of getting the same kind of thing from you. It was like, it just happened. Wasn't particularly good at it, but obviously worked out.
I think humility is an important part of life as well, though. So notwithstanding, I was given some fairly excellent opportunities through what I'd done. So I was given a lot more responsibility in the US. It was great, and I was given a scholarship from PASCs to study in Australia. So, things have definitely fallen in my lap. I've been very, very lucky with, what I've done. So
you got a scholarship and that's how you ended up in Australia?
Back studying. First year I went home to see my parents and went to PASCs to see them. And Chris Pask, the owner of Pask Winery, said, well, if you're at university, you should do honours. So I did honours in fourth year as a function of Chris's suggestion. So, and then things kind of cascaded from there.
So where did you end up at university?
So I did enology at Adelaide, which is, I had a great time. It was a good course. I was into it. Again, not a classically excellent student, but P's mean degrees. So I got through and...
you did a PhD on... Can you explain what the title was? Because I couldn't understand when I read it.
Evolution of wine yeast, essentially looking at evolving wine yeast in a directed evolution system and then genetically classifying the differences.
Okay, so in layman's terms, what does that mean?
We forced a yeast to ferment sugar and produce less ethanol and then looked at what the genetic response was compared to its parent.
You sound pretty smart to me.
If I can do a PhD, most people can. So.
Oh, no, they can't. No, they can't. You were very much very humble. And I think you were well described as extremely well educated. That's what someone wrote about you. Extremely talented, I think it was, and extremely smart. So, yeah, no, it's there, black and white. It was on the internet, so it must be true.
That's a missive that we should all follow, isn't it?
Well, looking at uni and your time at Adelaide Uni, you met your now partner, Jenny Gardner, there.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Where did you meet?
Jen was actually one of our demonstrators for Wine Micro in second year, and which is, that was our first meeting really. And then when I did honours, she was finishing her PhD in the same lab. And so Vlad, who was my honours supervisor, he went on sabbatical, and Jen pretty much kind of coerced me through honours. And then, we were mates for a long time, then we started dating and, got married, had a kid, here we are now. So Jen studied micro at uni. Then she moved to Queensland. She did honours in Adelaide. She moved to Queensland and worked at UQ as an RA. And then she moved back to South Australia to be closer to her family, I think in 98. And she was going to do a PhD, so she decided, because her parents, Dad bought this property in 1986. She'd been up here so many times making wine with him and that kind of thing. She thought a wine background PhD would be more interesting than she was doing medical research, like she was looking at sex determination genes. When she was at UQ, she thought that, something was a bit more familial related would be a nice tie. So Jen still works as a postdoctoral researcher at University of Adelaide. So you do a PhD generally to stay in the field of science. Like the application of what I did with my PhD v what I do day to day is negligible, other than being able to use words like evolution. And even, that's on witted toilet paper, so everyone's fine with that. That structural path really isn't about agriculture generally. And there are a number of people that have done PhDs and work back into agriculture or other fields, but typically that path is for academia. So
when you did your PhD, what was your end goal? What did you want to do?
Just a learning process, really. It was, the opportunity was there, and it took me nearly 4 years to finish it, but it gave me an opportunity we could still run Adelina, I could still do the PhD. I got a classic way of looking at things with a different perspective, thinking about things, learning essentially.
So when did you move up to the Clare Valley?
I still only live here part-time, so I've been here since the end of 2002. But yeah, so I'm here part-time of the week and then town part-time of the week. During vintage, I'm here all the time. Right, so what do you do down in Adelaide? Run the rest of the business. Right, so the marketing, that type of thing. Yeah, admin, that kind of stuff. And Jen, is she down there most of the time? Or yeah, she's at Adelaide Uni as a postdoc. She's got PhD students, all that kind of stuff. So Jen's parents were originally on this place. Let's describe to everyone where this place is. About 5k southeast township of Clare, so up Wendouree Road East. Across the road from Wendouree. Yep. How does it feel being right across the road from there? It's wonderful. They're wonderful people. Mm. Yeah. But it's got such a great reputation, doesn't it? We have such a terrible reputation. It's wonderful to balance that. The Bradys have been, I can't describe how indebted we are to Tony and Lita Brady. They've been wonderful people to us, just in terms of sharing of knowledge as a small part of the community. I try my best not to be comparative with what, Wendouree are and do. I know the soils around here relatively well, I'd say. And yeah, there are some similarities for sure. It's inspiring looking at their wines, their vineyards and how they grow. And it gives us a good background, or it's a steadfast idea for us that we can work in a similar fashion. Notwithstanding, we have at no stage in our production cycle wanted to emulate or replicate what Wendouree is. It's such an iconic thing, and I think that would be it'd be the wrong thing to do in the big scheme of things. So that's never been our direction. We're just, very happy to be in an area which we think produces some amazing wines.
So what did Jen's parents do on this place? Did they have their own label, or did they supply another winery?
When Jen's dad bought the property in 86, the fruit went to different people over the years. So Tim Adams had some of the fruit for a while. I think Peter Lemon bought the fruit for some time as well, but probably prudent to remember that, when this property was bought, it was the vine pool scheme, and properties weren't, this was advertised as a property without vines on it, because you couldn't give away properties with vines on them. The situation was so poor, so dire. So when Will bought it, it only had the small Cabernet block, the Grenache and the Shiraz on it. So.
Why did you and Jen decide to change direction when you came onto the place? Why did you want to start your own label?
I guess Jen asked me if I could come and help, because Jen and her dad were making wine for friends and family. And Jen's dad was a physiotherapist, and Jen obviously classically trained in science, and I'd worked in wineries and had a winemaking degree, which meant that I knew nothing. And she said, can you give us a hand in some direction? So that it kind of started like that, and then getting talking, and it's like, oh well, why don't we do this for ourselves and make a commercial release? And that's how Adelina was kind of born.
And why Adelina?
That was a function of Jen and her dad. That's the name that they'd given the wines that they were making for friends and family. Like Jen's dad was a gregarious man, loved telling stories. He was an amazing human again, and he grew up in the Riverlands, and they had fabled stories of this Auntie Adelina as one of the migrant workers. It was it's a soft name, close to Adelaide, feminine. All those things worked well for Jen and her dad, so that historically that's kind of a nice piece of the story for our very short tenure of what we're doing.
You've been described as crafting a vibrant, authentic and sometimes unexpected wines. Sounds like you're pushing the boundaries to a degree.
Who wrote that?
I want to know, are you pushing the boundaries? What are you doing that's so different?
No, there's nothing really that new,
So then what do you do on this place? You obviously like to experiment and try new things.
That would have to be a mandate for most people, though, wouldn't it? You always try and do something new or learn something. I think that's progression in life, that you continually learn. But in terms of what we do here, it's relatively mundane. It's fairly staid. It's fairly, if not, these days we make kind of conservative styles of wine. It's, for me, wine is about a sense of place. I want to make wines that look like where they come from. So artifact of kind of extraneous fluff in the winery is not really our MO anymore. Years gone by, we do lots of things like grossly extended maceration and
grossly blah blah blah. What was that?
Grossly extended maceration. So leaving things on fruit on skins for hundreds of days, that kind of thing.
Wow.
But these days it's all fairly simple, and more of our time is spent outside in the vineyard, because that's ultimately where the benefit's going to be.
So it's not in the actual making of the wine, it's more in what you do out in the vineyard. That's where you put most of your effort into.
Well, ultimately, the best way of looking at it for me, and rather fairly throwaway quip, is you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. If the vineyard isn't performing, if it's not at its best, you're not going to be able to make it any better than it is. Our hope and intention is to keep working and learning about the vineyard, and we work with growers that we really enjoy working with. These are the foibles of the industry, but as it comes down to within the winery, for me, it's just we just try and make good, clean wine, I guess.
So how many growers are you working with, and how many hectares of vineyards do you have?
We only have 6 hectares here, and we work with maybe 4 or 5 growers in Clare and the Adelaide Hills.
And what do you specialise in? Is it mainly reds, whites? What varieties?
Talking about myself generally is what I specialise in.
Aren't we all good at specialising in that?
I'm not sure. It depends who you'd ask. I guess the estate is all red, essentially. So that would be, the flagships would be red, but the most volume we make is Riesling.
So the Riesling mainly comes from here?
Between Polish Hill and Watervale.
So what do you source from the Adelaide Hills?
Chardonnay. We used to get Nebbiolo and Barbera and Dolcetto, but unfortunately the Hills fire in 2020 took out the Nebbiolo vineyard. So Anne and Michael Bowlees and Adam Lovey's lost the entire site. So it was a real tragedy for them. Like they put nearly 35 years into that vineyard and it was taken from them. So that was a real loss for, the community. Like that was such a big resource for so many people, and for them, like that's the sad thing.
How are they going now?
They had a really tough year last year. So yeah.
Are they back? Are they back doing what they love, or
No.
are they're not going back?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just, and that's understandable as well. Yeah.
Oh, Nebbiolo.
Yeah, it's a Piemontese variety, so north of Italy. So classically orange coloured rustic tannic thing.
So how long had they been growing?
Nebbiolo plantings from 98, but they had other plantings from before, like Chardonnay from before that as well. They grew a number of different varieties, like Merlot, Pinot Grigio, Chardy, Arnais, Tannat. Jen and I chose to chase Nebbiolo and these varieties from Piedmont because through our travels through specifically Piedmont, kind of found that we were enamoured of them, and so when the opportunity to make them arose, we took that path, and it was like it's that kind of, I guess, the ardent feature of like as these cards fall in front of you, like Nebbiolo arrived, and then we got the chance to make some Arnais, which again is another variety of the same regions, so we kind of followed that bent. That's how that kind of arose. It hasn't been really about chasing the point of difference. Like we're not very shrewd when it comes to marketing and marketability. Everything has really been done over the years between the 3 brands purely out of selfish endeavour. So
how old are the vineyards here in your 6 hectare block?
Yeah, so in between like 1915 and last year was the last planting that we put in. So yeah, the estate Shiraz is about 1915, 1940s for the Grenache. The field blend was Cabernet planted in 1976, which we grafted across about 6 years ago to a randomised blend of different varieties. And then we've got blocks 3, 7, 8 and 9 were all planted in 2012 and 13.
Are you strictly organic?
Yeah, certified organic here.
Certified organic?
Here for the vineyard. Like that's a process that we follow ourselves routinely here. We work with the Smiths as well. They get some fruit from them in Polish Hill River, and they're certified organic. We've got a number of growers that are conventional as well. That's completely cool. Like, what we do here is, that's our focus is organics, and it has been for a number of years.
And why? Why is that such a focus for you?
I think it's a holistic way of looking at what's happening with the earth. And this isn't my statement. This is someone much wiser than I. In Australia, we have the oldest soils on the earth. So we should be doing everything we can to maintain structure and integrity and, I guess, sustainable production with them that we can. And I think that organics is a good way forward for that. And it's not just the idea of not using herbicides or pesticides. It's a much more, I guess, holistic view of it where you're looking at increasing diversity. So biodiversity is important, making sure that you've got as many opportunities for integrated pest management as you can have. All these kind of systematic approaches to try and increase the livelihood of the ground, the vitality. Have you noticed a change in the taste of the wine or anything like that because you've gone organic, or it doesn't work that way? You get tunnel vision pretty quickly with your own wines, I think, and when you have a pretty crap palate like I do, it's easy to miss things. So, I'd like that. I've noticed a change in the way that things grow and what's growing in the vineyard over the past 9 years for sure. And I think the wines are getting better for sure. I hope they're getting better, and I hope that as we keep going, hopefully for the next 20, 30 years, that they'll continue to get better as well. Tell me about Some Young Punks, because that's another one of your labels that you've collaboratively working with other people on. Is that right? Yeah, no, so Jen, Nick Burke and I went through uni together, and Nick was Ben Riggs' senior winemaker for ages. So Jen, Nick and I were sitting around early mid-2000s and thought it'd be great to have a bit of fun and make some wine together. And so we started Some Young Punks, and it was just a kind of a off-the-cuff idea of putting some wines together in some gaudy packaging and selling them to people that wanted to buy them.
Is that the reason also? You're trying to get a different demographic or target a different demographic with that?
Once again, there's been no market studies in anything we've done. It really has purely been a selfish endeavour. So the Punks thing came about because, if you go back to 2005, packaging change has been epic over the past 16 years, and it's been really cool to see. There's some really, what flies these days compared to what flew then is totally different. So when we started Punks, we used pulp fiction novels as the labels, and it was really garnered a bit of attention because it was quite different. And then we, over the years, we had different illustrators whip up labels for us with kind of quirky backstories, that kind of thing. But yeah, again, that was things that we liked. Like the pulp fiction novel idea came from Nick, who had collected pulp novels. So I believe the polite way of putting it was that he collected ephemera, and even through uni, like he'd had these novels on his coffee table. So drinking beers, would flick through these novels. It was a familiar idea, and it was
just a natural progression. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been nothing calculated about it at all. It's just been on a whim.
How did the market respond to that?
I think it did. It was really quite interesting. It was a love-hate relationship for so many. For as many emails as I'd get as people saying I love this label, I'd get as many saying this is sexist and it's misogynistic and like it's everyone's right to have their opinion and tell me about it because we put it in the marketplace. So yeah, we've just done a complete refresh on that package though. So it's where we've got 3 new labels for that, illustrated by a Adelaide tattoo artist, Jake Foreman. Yeah.
Where do you market your wine? Because you don't have a cellar door here.
For us, we don't market the wine at all because that would mean I'd have to do some work, and I'm really not fond of that. So we've got distribution network throughout Australia and a little bit export. We've been with our national distributor for Punks for 16 years, and they've looked after Adelina for the same time as well. So, but we're tiny. We're not a big player. We don't have the time, resources, or energy to staff a cellar door. You have to roll with the punches, and so we're very grateful for all the support we get locally, and understand that because people haven't heard of us, we can't be dismissive. You
said you're only small, so what's your tonnage? How much wine do you produce?
We crush here up to 100 tonne between Adelina and Punks and Vine Mind on a given year, because we crush off-site for Punks. We don't crush that here. Anywhere between 15 and 20,000 cases.
Vine Mind. Tell me about that brand.
It was we had excess wine that didn't fit into the Punks or Adelina ethos, and it was a bit more experimental in its approach of production. It all kind of fell about because Jen was a big part of working in the winery until we had Freya, which kind of it made it much harder, being a mum and working. And so it was the way things split up. Instead of being Adelina, it was Jen and Cole. It was just Cole because I was here most of the time. And, I think Jen really enjoyed the impact of thinking about wine and, the production side of it. And so the idea was Vine Wine was going to give her an opportunity to step back into directing wine and giving her some responsibility and because she yearned for it as well. And ultimately she's an exceptional scientist, and that's where, she's very driven with her career at the university, but she really wanted to be back, in charge of production as well. So Vine Wine gave her this kind of opportunity to direct some wine production and, make a small bit of wine that was her responsibility. And so that's kind of how that fell out.
So what is she producing?
We'll do Riesling. We've made Vermentino for a couple of years, and Shiraz Malbec.
Around here? Or
yeah. So it's all local growers.
And it's her baby?
Yeah, essentially that's the best way of looking at it.
Did you ever think that you'd be sitting here, think about yourself as a 17-year-old boy and where you are now. Did you ever imagine that this was going to be the road that you were going to take?
I don't know. I really was so dismissive as a teenager. There was really no foresight to what I was going to be doing. It wasn't really a big thing to me. I was quite happy to live week by week, and whatever happened would happen. So notwithstanding, it's very exciting to still be sitting here and plodding along, making a bit of booze, growing a vineyard. It's a really nice lifestyle, and you know, as I said before, I've been very fortunate. I've been gifted some wonderful opportunities in my very short tenure on this earth, and you know, so I hope that I'll do the right thing and continue to keep working or forging forward diligently, I think. So
that's the aim. The aim is to continue to do this type of work right through to you're an old man. That's the idea.
Well, I've got no other skill set, so, but yeah, you know, this is all I know, and I enjoy it. So it's not a bad lifestyle. So.
What's been the major challenges?
Money, keeping money, Like, I think everyone faces so many challenges in, you know, whatever position they're in, be it running their own business or working for someone, or there's lots of them, I guess. I don't know. I couldn't define one challenge. Everything, I was once told that if it was supposed to be easy, everyone would do it. So, you know, I guess the challenges are important to shape and build character.
What was the most challenging year since 2002?
2007, because it sucked. It was just a horrible vintage. We made some terrible wine. 2009 was pretty hard when we had Freya, because Freya was born on the 5th of March, which is vintage. That wasn't really that well planned. That was tiring. There's definitely been some ups and downs in there, and I think that sinusoidal part of life where, you know, we occasionally need those. The highs are great, and sometimes the lows are lower, and you need them to bring you back to reality sometimes. What
are you most proud of out of everything that you've done?
Oh, my family, I think. Yeah. You'd have to be the most proud of that, wouldn't you? It'd take a fairly egotistical person and say, oh, well, that's what I've built here. It'd be...
That could be number 2.
I think that there'd be a big daylight between, you know, my family and whatever's next, I think. Their successes really are better than anything that I've achieved by myself. So, and without them, my successes are negligible. So...
And what's the next step for Adelina?
Sleep. I'm not sure. Just keep growing grapes, keep trying to sell wine. The market's hard out there. The Eastern Seaboard's been closed for a long time, so restaurants have been down, and so everyone's feeling it. So the next thing is probably working together as a community.
Well, Cole, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and hearing your story, and thank you very much for taking the time out to have a chat to me today on the Voice It podcast.
Oh, not at all. Thanks very much for listening to me rabbit on, and I'm terribly sorry I forgot that you were coming.
Well, I wasn't going to let you tell me to come back at another time. I was determined to stay.
I wouldn't have done that anyway.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Colin McBryde, so glad I hung around. Great story. I bet some of you never knew Adelina was right here in the Clare Valley. Now you do. If you enjoyed this episode, share it around. Don't forget to rate and review. Keeps me doing what I do. And if you know of a hidden gem that's doing great things with their business and has an interesting life story, let me know. I'm Annabelle Homer. I'll catch you soon for another episode of the Voice It podcast.